So who is your Gen X bestie? Well, wouldn't you like to know? Well, she's your Gen X bestie. She's random and she talks a lot. Yeah. Last week, I posted a brief video describing what I hope this podcast, Random Conversations with Your Gen X Bestie, will become. This week, I thought I'd introduce you to your new Gen X bestie. That's me. But before we get into that, let's go back 40 years and take a look at what happened this week in 1986. On March 22nd, 1986, These Dreams by Heart was the #1 song in the U.S. On March 24th, 1986, the Rolling Stones' 20th album, Dirty Work, was released. The Pet Shop Boys' debut album, Please, was released. It featured the single West End Girls. And Van Halen's 7th album, 5150, was released. It reached #1 on the Billboard 200 chart on April 26, 1986, and it held that spot for 3 weeks. On March 25th, 1986, Perfect Strangers premiered on ABC. And on March 26th, 1986, The Money Pit, starring Shelley Long and Tom Hanks, was released in theaters, and Madonna's single, Live to Tell, was released. Okay, now back to the topic of the day. Me. My name is Mishal, and I am 53 years old, which means I was born in 1972, smack dab in the middle of Generation X. I was a kid of the 70s and 80s, and a teen of the 80s and 90s, and I loved every minute of it. I am a wife, a mom, and a grandma. I have 4 grandchildren, and I've been married to my husband for, let me do quick math here, 33 years. Almost. It'll be 33 this year. And I love my family. They're very important to me, but so is their privacy. So you're not really going to hear me talk about them too much in very much detail. I'll mention them from time to time, but we're not going to get into specifics. Feels kind of silly to have notes about my own life here, but there's things I want to make sure I tell you, and if I don't have notes, I will forget. Remember, 53? So in high school, I wasn't popular and I wasn't unpopular. I kind of flew under the radar. I got decent grades. I could have done better. It was not hard for me, but I also wasn't one of those people that was driven to get straight A's. So I did enough to get grades that wouldn't get me in trouble with my parents. And I probably should have applied myself more than I did. I had some really great friends, and they are women that I'm still friends with today, and I'm very thankful for that. After high school, I went to community college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so when I had the opportunity to go work full-time in an office for General Motors, I jumped at the chance. Back in the day, you could still get a full-time job with good benefits and insurance and all of that without a degree. So that was the route I took. I started out as a receptionist in one of the offices, and then I became Oldsmobile's telephone operator. I worked in the basement of the Oldsmobile headquarters building and said, "Thank you for calling Oldsmobile," 100 times a day. It was an interesting job. I got to meet some neat people, but it was a little weird too. During that time, I got married and we moved to Detroit for my husband's job, and then I eventually transferred over there with my job as well. And I ran a warehouse for General Motors Truck and Bus Division for their engineering department. And then our first baby was on the way, and I decided to be a stay-at-home mom. And I'll be honest, I am not a natural at that, and I don't really enjoy that sort of thing. I love my children. I made them a priority, and I'm glad I stayed home with them, but it wasn't something that I felt like I was very good at unless I tried really, really hard. So during those days that I was trying to throw myself into being a good housewife and a mom that stayed home and took care of everybody, I also felt like I needed some sort of outlet for myself. And so I tried some different things like selling home interiors, which was horrible. 0 stars, would not recommend. I was not good at that. But I'm not really good at sales in general, so that's probably part of my problem. I did things to be involved with what my kids had going on as an outlet to organize and lead things. I did the PTA, Girl Scouts. I ran the book fair at their elementary school. I did theater set production for them in high school when they were in plays and musicals. What else did I do? I have a list. Oh, and I did things like volunteered in our church with the youth group and stuff, which actually led into my first job outside of the home when the girls were a little older. One of the key things that I got to experience during that time that I was home was being part of the opioid crisis. I suffered several years from some chronic pain that was pretty severe, and back in the 90s, in the early 2000s, they treated that with painkillers and muscle relaxers. So that's a story for another day, but that was fun. Like I said, when the girls were a little older, I went back to work, and I had several office jobs over the years. I ran the youth ministry at a church. I was the church office administrator for a while. I went on from that to work at a university with their online learning program, and then as the department coordinator at their humanities and religion department. And then in 2015, I landed the job that I thought I was going to retire from. I got a job at a major university here in Michigan doing department coordination for a medical school program. And I was super excited about it. There was a lot of opportunity to further my education. There were great benefits. The pay was wonderful. And there was opportunity for growth in a career with that university. But in January of 2016, like 7 months after I took that job, I was in a rollover car accident and suffered a traumatic brain injury. And that ended my career. I spent several months trying to recover from that traumatic brain injury, and fortunately, eventually, I managed to overcome pretty much everything that had happened and that I struggled with because of the accident and the injury. I went to a fabulous clinic that has a special concussion clinic and did a lot of occupational and physical therapy that helped tremendously. But after it was done, I knew I couldn't do the commute into the city for that job anymore, and I couldn't handle all of the aspects of that job. It was too much. For a while, I tried doing an office job here locally that wasn't so far away and wasn't quite as challenging, but I just couldn't do that work anymore. I don't know if it was like my brain couldn't do the work anymore or my brain was unwilling to settle for doing that work anymore. Either way, it became really hard, and my husband told me, look, just don't do it. And so I didn't. I resigned. But that was hard because then I didn't have anything again. I already told you I wasn't a natural stay-at-home mom, and that threw me right back into it, except this time I was a stay-at-home grandma. My daughter and her family were living with us at the time, and my first grandchild had been born about a month before the accident. So those first few months with her were kind of a foggy blur. Both my daughters got married during that time while I was still working on recovering from the brain injury. So I feel like a lot of important things, firsts in my life, were very fuzzy. So that was hard to deal with emotionally. And then not being able to work and ending up back home was hard emotionally, mentally. And I struggled to find outlets. I kind of threw myself into the whole grandma thing, but it wasn't enough. And so I struggled, and it was getting pretty bad. But then COVID hit, and my little bit of outlet in the world got shut down like everything else. And so I was really struggling. It was very hard. What I ended up doing was finding TikTok. And that changed everything. I know that sounds crazy, but it was so much fun to just have an outlet. It didn't get me out of the house, but it got me out in the world digitally, and I met some people, and I would go live and we would chat, and I got to be creative. And I used to do lip syncs with makeup and hair and everything. I even developed a character, my signature character and alter ego, Eddie. And he's someone that you probably will meet eventually. I'm trying to figure out how to work him into the mix because it's super fun for me to play Eddie. I just really enjoy it. Let me show you a picture of him. So that's Eddie. But other than just the fun and the meeting people, I actually got to do some pretty cool things. I've been able to collaborate on some projects. I've even won a couple of awards because of those collaborations. I've been able to go to Washington, D.C. and speak on a panel for some people, and it's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it. And my signature series that kind of kept me going on these things was called Today in GenX History. And I would do a daily recap of things that had happened in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, GenX history. And I would keep it in the Trapper Keeper. So the Trapper Keeper is a little nod to my daily series. And so is the recap of what happened this week 40 years ago, because I love our nostalgia and I want to keep it alive. And so that's how we're going to handle that for now. And we'll see what happens with Today in GenX history in the future. I did the Today in GenX history for a couple of years, and it's kind of hard to make that fresh and new because it's not like anything new happens. It's in the past. And so trying to figure out how to tell you what happened on this day in the 80s, again, when I told you that last year and the year before, just got really challenging. So that's what led me to this project. I wanted to do something more, and I had intended to start this much sooner than I have. But just when I was ready to hit the ground running and get things going, Menopause punched me in the gut. And I went on a whole other journey for a couple of years here. And I'm finally coming out the other side and understanding that some of the things that were happening for me were because of menopause. I will be doing some podcast episodes about menopause because I think it's something very important to talk about, and I don't think people know enough about it. The conversation has gotten bigger, but I think there's still a lot we need to talk about. And so part of my focus is going to hopefully have a series where I let some women share their experience, not only so that they can feel validated and seen, but so that maybe the girls coming up behind us, the younger women coming up behind us, will have some information that we didn't have. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this is actually my second attempt at podcasting because I tried for a while to turn the Today in GenX History into a podcast called This Week in GenX History, where I would go over the history, but go more in depth or share some things that I couldn't fit into a 90-second video because when I started making those videos, that was the limit on most of the platforms was 90 seconds. And you got to hurry to get through some of that stuff. So it was fun for a few episodes, but then it just felt like, just more of the same, and it wasn't exciting. So I abandoned that. This I'm excited about because it's random, right? Random conversations. So we're just going to talk about everything. Sometimes it might seem like this week in GenX history, especially when a big event comes up and we can talk about that. And I might share, where was I when, or something, when the Challenger disaster happened, for example. But mostly it's going to be about where we are now, shared experience, shared worldview, point of view type stuff, because, we were shaped by a very unique place and time. And I think it'll be fun to hang out and talk about those things. While I was on this journey figuring out menopause the past couple of years, I also kind of dove into mental health and spiritual health stuff. And I've read some really great books. I've learned a lot of things about that, as well as like aging well, like how to make this body last for the next few decades. And so that's also going to be some of what we talk about. And I'm really excited about that because I think we can change the narrative around aging and what it means to age and how to age well. Gen X is a small cohort, but I think we have a lot to add to the conversation that's going on in the culture today on all different fronts. And I'm excited to see where we can take this. I'm also excited to have a place where I can gather with other Gen Xers because we are a small cohort. So a lot of times I find myself surrounded by people older and younger than I am. I'm even married to a very young boomer. So even my spouse is not Gen X. And while he's not that much older than me, he's old enough that it was a little bit different of an experience. So, it'd be nice to talk to some Gen Xers, and I'm looking forward to our chats. And like I said in the introduction video, I don't want this to be just like a Gen X echo chamber. It's just a space that's going to be mostly about Gen X stuff, but other people are welcome to join the conversation. Older millennials, younger boomers, they're going to relate to a lot of the things that we talk about here. Okay, so that's all my hopes and dreams in a nutshell. I hope I didn't bore you to tears and that you will come back and chat with me again. Later, dudes.